everyone, welcome to today's workshop. We're going to talk about summer recruiting simplified, and we're going to go ahead and wait just a minute and then we'll get started. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. For those of you who have not been here before, I'm Devin Martin from South Mountain Lacrosse, and we're going to talk about what you need to be doing this summer if you'd like to get recruited to play lacrosse in college. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is recruiting myths. The first one is not needing to start the recruiting process until you're an upperclassman or you know where you want to go to college. And that's not true. The sooner you start, the more options you'll have in terms of choosing among different colleges. Now, if you're an upperclassman and you're only just now starting, that's okay. There's a lot you'll have to do to kind of catch up and make sure you're reaching out to coaches, but it's not too late. If you're an underclassman or you're still in middle school, it's a really good time to start researching colleges and programs, start communicating with coaches, and get your recruiting profiles in order. The second myth is that lacrosse skills are the most important part of the recruiting process, and that's also not true. If you would like to play lacrosse in college, the truth is you're going to have to get into the college you want to play lacrosse at. So you have to get past an admissions dean or admissions committee, however that school operates in terms of their admissions process. But you can't play lacrosse anywhere if you can't get into school there. And it's a little bit different with some of the money-making sports like football and basketball. There's a little more leeway for kids, but in sports like women's lacrosse, pretty much just about any women's sport, you've got to have really good grades for coaches to look at you. If your grades aren't good enough to get into the school, the coach can't get you in. So we have here a slide that Damon, the Lax goalie rat, put together a little while back, and he surveyed a whole lot of schools with lacrosse programs, and the breakdown holds across most sports. The higher your GPA, the more schools can recruit you, and it's just that simple. So if you have a 4.0 GPA, most of the schools can recruit you, and it's not 100% because some schools are only recruiting based on a particular gender, or it's a military academy that operates a different way, those kinds of things. But the higher your GPA, the more schools can recruit you. And you can see on the slide, there's a huge difference between a 3.0 GPA and a 4.0 GPA. So if you're already in high school, work to keep your grades up or improve your grades if you need to. If you're just starting high school, make sure you keep your grades up from the start, because that's your best bet to have options playing sports in college, is to keep up your grades. The same holds true for test scores like the SAT and the ACT. The higher your SAT scores or ACT scores, the more schools can look at you seriously and consider recruiting you. For the SAT, shoot for at least a 1200 minimum, but the higher you can get, the better. What the NCAA looks at if you want to play lacrosse in college is you have to take 16 core courses, and the minimum GPA they require, no matter what the school you're interested in requires, is either a 2.2 or a 2.3, depending on whether you want to go D2 or D1. If you're a 2023, now that you're going into your senior year, 10 of your core courses are already locked in to that GPA calculation. And the NCAA only counts core courses in that GPA requirement. You can go to ncaa.org and type a search for core courses, and you can look, they'll have an option where you can click find my school's core courses, and you go through a search and you find your high school, and you can see a complete list of core courses that's offered at your school. You can also talk to your guidance counselor to kind of figure out what those are. But basically it's your standard English courses, math courses that are Algebra 1 or above, things like government, economics, world languages, the sciences. Those are the kinds of courses that go into the core course calculation. Fine arts, technical education, those kinds of things typically do not. But if you're a senior, if you're a 2023 going into your senior year, at least 10 of your core courses are already locked in. And you want to stay on track to make sure by the time you graduate, you have completed the minimum number of core courses. And you're going to want to make sure on your recruiting profile that you've uploaded your most recent transcript for coaches to see. If you're a 2024, you want to make sure that by the end of this year, you've completed at least 10 core courses. And most of you should have more than that by the end of this year. And again, you'll also want to upload your most recent transcript so that coaches can see your grades. If you're a 25 or 26, make sure you're looking to see which courses you're taking count as core and what courses you're planning to take, and make sure you're taking enough core courses in the right time frame. If you're a 2025 and you just finished your freshman year, you need to upload your first high school transcript into your recruiting profile. You have two places in your profiles to put your grades. You put your GPA, and then you upload your transcripts separately. And it's really important for all high school students to upload their transcripts into the profile, because the coaches really need to see that to make sure that your GPA is meeting the requirement they need for the NCAA and for their school, and that you're on track with your core courses. So again, D1, you have to take 16 core courses, 2.3 GPA. Your SAT combined score or your ACT sum, there's a chart. The higher your GPA, the lower your test scores can be, and it kind of fluctuates. So make sure that you're looking at that chart as well. If you're a 2023, if you have not yet taken the SAT or ACT, you want to make sure you're doing that this fall, if not this summer, but you want to knock that out as quickly as possible. If you're a 24, test as soon as you're ready. 25s and 26s, just kind of prepare, look at the test schedule, plan to take the PSAT. For D2, it's very similar. It's 16 core courses, 2.2 GPA, same sort of sliding scale. If you need information on the SAT, just go to satsuite.collegeboard.org and you can sign up for tests, see when they're all offered. The ACT is act.org. For both of them, you will have to send your scores directly to the NCAA from the testing body. So it's easy, it's code 9999. So when you sign up for the test, just make sure you list the NCAA as one of your score recipients. Again, 2023s, if you haven't already taken one or both of those tests, plan to knock those out pretty quick. For 2024s, as soon as you can, take those. That way you have time if you need to retake to get a higher score. 25s and 26s, again, just start looking ahead. Recruiting myth number 3. If I go to as many tournaments as possible, I'll get recruited. That's just not true. College coaches don't just show up at tournaments and randomly watch people or watch everyone that's there. Most of the recruiting tournaments are way too large, and coaches plan in advance. They have very limited time, and so they have a schedule, and they know who they want to see. And when they show up, they really don't have very much time, even if you're on their list. They're only spending maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes watching you and your team play. So you can't just show up at a tournament and expect coaches to see you and think that that's how you'll get recruited. You're going to need to make sure when you're going to tournaments that you check and see which coaches will be there. And you can find that out ahead of time. There's a few ways you can do that, and we'll kind of go through that in a minute. But you want to reach out to those coaches in advance and be communicating with them so that they're interested and they put you on their list as someone they want to watch play. And then there are other things you can do to get recruited that, quite frankly, work a lot better than tournaments. The best thing about tournaments is getting film, not really interacting with coaches. Too many kids, not enough time. Attend other recruiting events. So IWLCA has their tournament series, and that's, Capital Cup, Southeast Cup, Midwest Cup, President's Cup, Southwest Cup, West Coast Cup. It's all of those. Champions Cup, and they have them all over the country. And they've started doing these IWLCA experiences the night before each of those tournaments. They cost $200. They limit the number of girls who can go, and they have a lot of college coaches that attend. And so you get a lot more time doing drills run by college coaches. They talk to you about recruiting, but you get a lot more looks with a lot of college coaches if you go to those events. IWLCA does a really good job. Each of those experiences, they charge about $200, but they also offer scholarships. So if you're in need, you can apply for a scholarship. So if you're already going to one of those tournaments, sign up for one of those experiences, apply for a scholarship if you need. But that's a really good way to get in front of coaches and get more time, more looks, more attention, because the coach to player ratio is much better. Other tournaments also do pre-tournament showcases. So Adrenaline does that at a lot of their tournaments. They still have a few spots left for America's Finest Rivalry in a few weeks. They do the San Diego Prospect Day right before it. And like I said, there are still a few spots open as of today, and a few spots in every position. But they have a lot of college coaches that go to those, and you can sign up. They're usually pretty inexpensive. And again, you get a lot more time with college coaches. So if you're going to be at some of those tournaments, those are something you might want to look at. There used to be an event called Tenacity Western Winners. Now Trilogy puts it on, but the event is the same. It's held every June and December. And June is typically now in Salt Lake City, and December is usually held on one of the Claremont College campuses. But they bring in a lot of coaches, and they also limit the number of girls, and they have a range of D1, D2, D3 coaches that come, but a lot of coaches go to those events. The June one is in Salt Lake City in just a couple of weeks, and then December, it's usually mid-December, and again, that's California. And then XPO has a camp in California. It just happened this past weekend. They always sell out. It's a limited number of players and a lot of college coaches. So it's a really good way to interact with coaches, much better than a lot of the tournaments. There's Elite 180, and that's always held on the East Coast, always in June. It's coming up pretty soon. There, the focus is high academic D3s. So if you're interested in some of those schools, it's a really good opportunity. Denver every July runs a super elite camp where they bring in a lot of coaches, mostly D1, some D2 and D3, from all over the place. And it's the same kind of thing. They always sell out, and the player to coach ratio is really good. It's much better than tournaments. There's other prospect days, ID clinics, those kinds of things you can go to, and you get a lot more interaction with the coaches than just showing up at a tournament. If you're not sure where coaches will be for schools you're interested in, They usually post. So here we're going to go through a few slides of things that college coaches have posted just in the last week. So we have Harvard, and they've got the tournaments that they're going to be at. And then next to Harvard is San Diego State. So we can see Harvard staying more on the East Coast. San Diego State's sort of going all over the place, but they'll be at America's Finest Rivalry. They'll be at West Coast Cup. They will be at Western Winners. Anderson University in South Carolina, they've posted just this week where they'll be this summer. Dominican University is outside of the San Francisco area, and they've posted as well this week where they will be recruiting. And then we have Fort Lewis College, a D2 out of Colorado, and they'll be around at a lot of the same events on this side of the country. And then we have Delaware State, so you can see where they'll be. And then we have Hartford and Earlham, both D3 schools. Their coaches have just this week posted where they'll be. For Hartford, it's the whole summer. For Earlham, it's just so far for the month of June. But if you're interested in any of these schools, or if there are other schools you're interested in, follow the coaches or the schools, look on Instagram, see what they're posting for where they'll be. You can also just check right on the tournament sites. So if you go to Adrenaline's America's Finest Rivalry, you can just scroll down to the bottom of that tournament page and it'll have a attending college coaches option. And you just click that and you'll see what's on the bottom of the screen here. And you can see confirmed college coaches who will be at that event. So if you're interested in any of those schools, you want to reach out to those coaches in advance to make sure you're communicating with them and you maximize the chances that they might be willing to set aside some time to watch you play in that tournament. Elite 180 that I mentioned before, East Coast, the focus is on the high academic performing schools. D3s, you can see the list there, Middlebury, Tufts, MIT, lots of really good schools. If you're not interested in smaller, really high-performing academic institutions, then it's not worth flying all the way across the country if you're on the West Coast, because those are the colleges that focus on that tournament. But if you are interested in those kinds of schools, it's a really great opportunity to make one trip, spend a few days at camp, and have access to all of those coaches. And the coaches run the camp, so they run all the drills, scrimmages, everything. So you get a lot of time with the coaches if you go to that event. So Western Winners, these are all the schools that are sending coaches for June in Salt Lake City. So lots of coaches, a mix, D1, 2, and 3. But they get quite a few coaches. And then Denver Super Elite Camp in July. You can see which colleges and which coaches they've confirmed they'll be sending. So again, lots of coaches, lots of different schools. It's a really good opportunity if as a player you're interested in any of those schools to go to those events. And just like a tournament, if you're going to one of those camps or showcases, reach out to the coaches you're interested in advance and let them know you're attending so they can keep an eye out for you if they're interested. And then again, the IWLCA experiences, you just go to their website and you can click on the experience you want depending on which tournament you're going to. The West Coast Cup will be in San Jose in July, end of July. Midwest Cup is mid-July. It's always in the Illinois, Indiana area. Southwest Cup will be in Tucson, first weekend of November. And then President's Cup is in Dallas the weekend before Thanksgiving weekend, so also in November. And those are really good opportunities to get in front of college coaches. Recruiting myth 4. I need to play for the club with the most tournament championships, wins, all that kind of stuff to get recruited. You just don't. When coaches watch you at camps, at clinics, at prospect days, at tournaments, they're watching your skills. They don't have time to look up and try and find from past tournaments your team's record. And they're seeing little bits of a game if they're at a tournament. They don't know if you win or lose the game at the end. They don't know how you did in the tournament as a team in your division. They're watching players, looking for specific skills. It's not something they're worried about. But as they watch you play, and most coaches to recruit a player will want to see them play over time more than once. And so what they're really looking for is that you're getting better. So you're at the right skill level for what they need, and you're improving. So play for a club that works on your long-term development, works on your skill development, individual and team skills. Don't worry about whether or not you're winning every game in a tournament or winning your division. Don't worry about it. Work on your skills. Find a team that helps you get better. And then recruiting myth number 5. The behavior or attitude of your coaches, your teammates, parents won't impact your recruiting process at all. And this myth has really hurt a lot of kids. When college coaches are out at tournaments, at prospect days, camps, clinics, wherever they are looking for players, they're evaluating you and they're evaluating the environment around you. And it's an unfortunate truth. So if you're playing for a team that has a coach that's constantly storming out onto the field, screaming and yelling at the refs, it's a red flag for college coaches. That behavior is a problem. If your parents are the ones screaming and yelling along the sideline, if your parents are off kind of 20 feet behind the goal, ranting and raving and flailing their arms about, and I've seen it happen, that's a problem. Coaches are everywhere at tournaments, and they watch a lot more than you think. Some coaches will hang out in a designated coaching box at a tournament. Others will intermix where the parents are on the sideline. Some will kind of hang out by the officials' table, by the teams. Some of them like to move around. Some coaches will wear things that clearly identify them as a coach, the school they're coming from, and others don't. They show up in street clothes and you may or may not recognize them. So you need to be careful because you never know who's around and what they're seeing. And you don't want to get off the field and turn to your teammate while you're drinking water and start complaining about other teammates on the field because someone 10 feet away might be a college coach listening to you badmouth your teammates or listen to you say nothing as your teammates are badmouthing each other. So you really have to be careful. Be on your best behavior at events. If your parents are constantly making a scene, screaming, yelling, complaining, yelling at your coach, yelling at the officials, you might need to have a frank conversation with your parents that they've got to tone it down, because if you want to get recruited, that's a problem. So what do we want to do if we want to get recruited? You need to set up a recruiting profile if you haven't already. You definitely need a highlight reel. You need something to get coaches' attention. You're going to want to research colleges and programs so that you can find the right fit for you. Plan on what are the best events and activities that are coming up that you should be doing to get the attention of the coaches that most interest you. And you've got to be reaching out to these coaches. So there are a few good recruiting profile services you can use. NCSA is partnered with USA Lacrosse. Sports Recruits is partnered with IWLCA. Connect Lax had a partnership with the WPLL, now Athletes Unlimited. Captain U's another pretty popular one. All of these recruiting profile services offer free options. Connect Lax, if you do a free option, it's only short term. And then it's pretty inexpensive. They charge like $8 or $9 a month for as long as you need it. And then you can just cancel when you're recruited and you're done. With NCSA and Sports Recruits, you can keep a free profile forever. It doesn't have as many features as the paid option, but it has enough features that you can put up everything you need for coaches. You just can't email through the system and some other things like that. You can't see as many details about which coaches are looking at your profile if you haven't paid. But you can still see that coaches are looking at your profile. You can still see all the coach information, so you could email them outside of the profile system. But they're all pretty good. Different coaches prefer different services, and they tend to use some more than others. The IWLCA tournaments all use Sports Recruits because that's their partner. And some tournaments auto feed things to other profiles. There's no reason, if you really want to get recruited and you want to reach as many people as possible, that you couldn't, say, set up a free profile in NCSA and a free profile in Sports Recruits. Once you get them set up, as you update things, it's just a couple extra minutes to do the second one to match the first. But they're all good options. All of them have free options, so you don't have to spend a lot of money to set up a recruiting profile, but you really need one. And here's what we need in our recruiting profile. So on this particular slide, what's in gold over here, name, contact info, what's your grad year, what positions you play, that absolutely has to be everything completed in your profile for you to be viewable and searchable by college coaches. So if you don't yet have a profile and you want to set up a free profile, make sure you get that information in first, because at least that way you're searchable by coaches. Then they all have an academic section, so you can put in your GPA. Some of them give you options to put your core GPA, your weighted GPA, and your unweighted separately. Others, you just put in one and you pick which it is, weighted or unweighted, for example. So they're all a little bit different, but they all have a place to put your GPA. They all have a place to upload transcripts. They all have a place where you can list if you're taking honors courses, AP courses, IB courses for International Baccalaureate, that kind of thing. Test scores. So they all have those options. So we'll talk a little bit about later, based on your grad year, what should be in there. They have athletics tabs. You put your high school team, club team, information about your coaches, statistics. If you have verified statistics from a combine or some other event, you can put those in. And then there's a place to put in your highlight videos. And pretty much all the recruiting profiles will let you post multiple highlight videos, so you don't have to do just one. And then they all have a place where you can put events that you'll be attending. So you can list tournaments, camps, clinics, whatever it is, showcases that you'll be at. And a reason why you might want to do this is all the recruiting profiles have an option for coaches where if they're going to a particular tournament, they can go into the recruiting profile service and they can do a search looking for kids in a certain grad year in a certain position who will be at a specific event. So if you've indicated you'll be at that event and you meet their other criteria, you'll show up in their search. If you don't list the event and you don't say you're going to be there, you won't show up in that search. So it's a good reason to put in the events over summer, fall that you'll be attending so that you will show up in those searches. So if coaches are looking for players like you, they'll see that you'll be at an event they'll be at. There's a section for activities, so you can put high school clubs that you're in, if you have any kind of honors, awards, any sort of press, public service you've done. There's a place for a personal statement. You can put your social media handles so that coaches can check that out as well. So if you're a 2023 and you're going into your senior year, your profile should be pretty much complete. You should have your GPA in there. You should have at least some transcripts in there. you should have your high school team, your club team, coach information. You should have some highlight reels, all those kinds of things. That should already be in there. If you are going into your senior year and you think you want to play D1 or D2, then you want to make sure you register with the NCAA Eligibility Center, and that's eligibilitycenter.org. There's a small fee for that. They do offer scholarships if kids need it to cover it. If you're not sure if you want to do D1, D2, D3, just do an NCAA profile page so that the NCAA has the information on you that they need and that coaches need. If you're a 24 or 25, your profile should be fairly complete. You will probably not have test scores yet, and you won't have the NCAA registration yet, but you should have some of pretty much everything else. If you're a 26 or a 27 and you don't yet have a profile, create one. Get that basic information in there so you're searchable. Start putting in the events you'll be attending, and we'll talk a little bit about highlight reels in a minute and what you can do to make sure you've got highlights up there for coaches. So here's kind of a quick example of what an an NCSA profile will look like when you first build one and log in. It'll have your name, height, weight, grade, that kind of thing, a picture that you can upload, and then you can kind of see along this top bar here, they have slots for academics and athletics and events and those kinds of things, and you just click on them and add your information and update everything. And then when coaches log in, they can just click on those tabs and see what you've put in. For sports recruits, if it's lacrosse, it'll show up as IWLCA recruits for you. It's very similar. It'll have your name, a picture, and you can see on the left side instead over here where a player can go in and put in athletics, academics, events, all those kinds of things. Same thing, coaches can see all that information. Basic information about you is public when you set up a profile, but things like your test scores, your GPA, your transcripts, none of those things are public. So you don't have to worry about that. All those things coaches can only see if they're logged in as a coach. And so if someone else is looking you up, or if a coach is not logged in, they won't see any of that personal information. They will see, though, if you're committed or not, they'll see things like height, weight, position, all those things show up as public. A good thing to do if you're not sure about how your profile looks, or if you're new to building a profile and you're not really sure how to put things in, find some comparison profiles of other kids to look at. For NCSA, for women's lacrosse, for example, if you go to ncssports.org and you do the / women's lacrosse recruiting / and you can do Arizona, California, Colorado, pick, and then from there you can do by city, school, and you can randomly just click on different kids' profiles and see what they look like and get a sense of what kinds of information you should be putting in. You can see personal statements, so you can see what looks and sounds good to you, what doesn't. You can look at highlight reels and see what seems to be working or not. I really like ConnectLax actually for comparison profiles. If you go to connectlax.com/recruit search, theirs is set up really nicely on the left-hand side of the screen. All you do is set the criteria. Do you want men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, both? Do you want particular grad years or all of them? Do you only want certain positions or all of them? You can even type in a zip code and pick that you want to see all the profiles, 10 miles, 20, 50, 400, anything within 400 miles of that zip code, whatever it is you want. And then the profiles all just show up, and you can look at all those individual profiles and kind of compare. Sports Recruits isn't too bad for searching either. You just go to iwlca.sportsrecruits.com/athlete/ and their profile naming convention is first name underscore last name. So if you're looking for particular athletes, that's an easy way to find them. It works really well unless you're looking for Mary Smith or someone else with a really common name. Then the naming convention doesn't work because there are numbers and those kinds of things after, so it's harder to find people. But if you know who you're looking for a comparison, Sports Recruits is a really good way to go as well. And then for the highlight videos, you're going to want to put up on your profiles. Highlight videos are so important. And again, that's the best thing about tournaments, is getting film for highlight videos so that you've got something you can send to coaches, something you can post on your profiles for coaches to see, to help get them interested in you as a player. If you're a 23 or a 24, so you're going into your junior or senior year, you should hopefully already have multiple highlight reels from high school varsity seasons or club seasons that you've had. If you're a 25, you want to make sure you're putting together a reel from your freshman high school season. And you're going to want to plan on building some sort of highlight reel from whatever you're doing this summer. If you're a 26 or 27, you want to plan on doing a reel from your summer club season for sure, so that you've got something for coaches. So what do we need in a highlight video? If you haven't done one, or if you've done one and you're not quite sure if you did it right, 3 to 4 minutes in length, and you want 20 to 25 of your best plays. Now, if you have a few plays that are a little longer, you might have slightly fewer plays. You want to show both offense and defense. Ideally, high school varsity or elite club footage as best you can. The best resolution you can get. Either use appropriate music or no music, but be very careful with the music. I would recommend, if you're a goalie or a defender and your communication is really good, to not have music and use the field noise in your highlight reel so that coaches can hear your defensive communication. If you go through and you pull clips from, say, last season and you put them together and you've got 2 minutes and 45 seconds worth of clips, great. It's better to have 2 minutes and 45 seconds worth of great clips than adding extra stuff to hit, say, that 3 to 4 minute average length. Don't go over 4 minutes. Coaches are not going to sit there and watch your 10-minute highlight reel. So if you're a goalie, what do you want in your video? A variety of saves. You want to show side-to-side movement. You want to show accurate outlet passes, clears. You want to make sure coaches can see your stance in a variety of situations and how you set up and approach shots. So you want a variety of those things as best you can in your video. If you're defense, 1v1 defense, change of direction, team defense, including your communication, slides, double teams, show your speed and agility, footwork. Can you get a ground ball? How do you do on a clear with your goalie? Can you make long passes? Can you turn the ball carrier? Can you pick up the ball on a fast break? Those kinds of things. So you want to show a variety of those skills. I will tell you, for clean and accurate checks, if you're playing a game and you have a clip where you have checked a girl so hard her stick's gone to the ground, but the reason you were able to check her is because you gave up body position to make the check, don't put that in your video. Don't put things in your video that are bad habits that a college coach would know they would have to break you of. So you probably have club or high school coaches that tell you never give up body position for a check. So please don't put in your highlight reel you giving up body position for a check. So just keep those kinds of things in mind. If you're attack, you want to show a variety of dodges, 1v1 to cage, goals and assists. Now you may have more goals than assists or more assists than goals. You don't have to have an exact even amount in your highlight reel, but you should be able to show both. A variety of shot placement, so don't show the same shot from the same side of the cage toward the same corner every time. You want to show a variety of fakes. You want to show that you can handle the ball under pressure. Ideally that you have right and left stick skills. Again, a variety of shot angles. Show you can ride. That's part of the job if you're attack. So you need to show those skills as well. And make sure you do show a variety of dodges and fakes. Even if you're really good at a roll dodge, do not show roll dodge to goal 6-7 times in a row in your highlight reel. Show something different so coaches can see a variety of skills from you. If you're midfield, it's a little bit tougher because you've got the same amount of time and you've really got to show the same kinds of skills both attack and defense have to show. And then you're also showing your transition game, draws or circle play, depending on whether or not you're the center or on the circle. But do the best you can to put in a variety of skills. You don't have to try and find one of everything, but make sure if you're midfield, you have a variety of both offense and defense. If you don't have a highlight reel and you don't have film to go back, so maybe your high school team didn't have anyone filming games, or your club hasn't been able to get film, it happens. You can do a skills video to show coaches and to put up on your profile. And if you're doing a skills video, you can do them in your backyard, you can do them at a local park. There were a lot of skills videos put out during COVID when there wasn't much going on, and you can still do them now. So if you're going to do a skills video, showcase your agility and technical skills. You can show some wall ball drills, do a variety of shooting, dodging, footwork, show some change of speed and direction. Try and go full speed, game speed at all times. Coaches want to see how fast you can move. There are all sorts of demo drills based on position that you can do. Kylie Ohlmiller in her KO17 app has a lot of drills. You could just get a friend or family member to film you doing some of those drills for a skills video. Shake School, he's got some free content. He's got a lot of paid content. But what he often does is he'll post people doing his drills on Instagram. And you can go find him, Shake School, on Instagram and look at past posts where you can see people doing his drills, and you can imitate some of those and do some of those drills for your skills video. He used to have at Shake School almost exclusively attack, kind of all attack all the time sort of drills, but he's added quite a number of good defensive drills as well now. And so you can look and see what's out there depending on what position you are, and do some of those drills for a skills video if you need. Other things you want to put on your profile as soon as you reasonably can. A personal statement. It helps coaches get to know who you are as a person and keeps them interested in looking at more of your profile. It shouldn't be more than 7 to 10 sentences, just a paragraph or two. You want to tell them things about yourself that they wouldn't already know looking at your profile. So don't start a personal statement saying, "Hi, my name is Mary Smith. I've been playing lacrosse for 4 years. I go to such and such high school. I play for this club." Don't waste your limited space. Coaches don't have a lot of time to read personal statements and look at profiles. And so they want to learn quickly, who are you as a person, as a player? So use that personal statement space to tell them things about you they wouldn't otherwise know. You're a twin, you also play tennis, you read 200 books a year, whatever it is, but you want to tell them things about yourself that are positive, that might show some sort of personal strength, but things that they wouldn't find otherwise by just looking through your profile. And again, make sure your academics are in there. As fast as you can get academics up on your profiles, do it. If you're 2026 and you're just going into high school, you won't have a high school GPA or transcripts yet, so don't worry about it. But if you are taking honors courses your freshman year, go into those profiles and list them. And then as soon as you have high school grades at the end of the semester or end of the year, put in your GPA and transcripts as quickly as you can. But if you're in middle school going into your freshman year of high school right now, you don't need to worry about trying to upload middle school transcripts. Nobody cares. And you're going to want to start researching colleges. Right now, there are over 500 NCAA schools that have women's lacrosse. And there are about 40 or so NAIA schools that have women's lacrosse. So that's a lot of colleges and universities that have women's lacrosse teams. And you really can't be reaching out to all these college coaches. So you've got to narrow down as quickly as you can what types of schools and then what schools you might be interested in attending. And so you want to start researching the colleges as soon as possible if you haven't already. And even if you're still in middle school or you're only just going into high school, start the research now. You can go to college websites. Sports Recruits has a ton of information about colleges. You just click right through the recruiting profile. So does NCSA. They both have options where you can you can find colleges, click on colleges you might be interested in. You could do searches from both of those profile services to look for colleges in a certain region or public versus private. You can look for schools based on size, cost, all kinds of things. U.S. News always puts out reports. You can talk to a high school guidance counselor, talk to friends and family, talk to high school and club coaches. But there's a lot of different ways you can research colleges. You can just type college names that you've heard of, in a Google search and go to the college's website and find all sorts of information about the schools. But things you should consider are the retention rates. And that's the number of students. In most cases, colleges will report retention fall to fall, freshman year to sophomore year. Of all the students who started in the fall as freshmen, how many of them returned the next fall as sophomores? And the higher the retention rate, the better, because that means students are doing well and coming back. Schools will also report graduation rates, and they'll typically do what percent of their students who started as freshmen graduate in 4 years or graduate in 5 years, that kind of thing. And those are important things to know. Are students staying? Are they graduating? You want to look at the location of the school, the size of the school. If you've grown up always in a major metropolitan area and you have no desire to go into a more rural environment, you might want to consider that when you're searching for colleges. Do you want to go to a big school, a middle-sized school, a small school? But also consider size of a school relative to location. So for example, if you're thinking you want to go to a mid-size or large school, there are the Claremont colleges in California, and they're a really good example of this. There's Claremont McKenna, there's Harvey Mudd, there's Scripps, there's Pomona, there's Pitzer. Those are the undergraduate Claremont colleges. Each of them has about 2,000 students. And then there are 2 graduate schools within the Claremont colleges. So 7 schools total. They're all next to each other. They all connect. Students in one school can take classes in one of the other colleges. So if you're thinking you want a mid-sized school and then you're thinking, oh, Scripps seems great, but they're super small, it doesn't really have a small feel because it's 7 colleges connected. And so there's really 10 to 15,000 students, not 2,000 for the one school. And they're located in a suburb of LA. So it's very metropolitan. So it's not the same as a 2,000 student school in a very rural area. So those are things you also want to consider. A school that's a little bit smaller, but in a major metropolitan area or around a lot of other schools won't seem as small. What type of school is it? Is it a liberal arts college? Is it a research university? How selective is it in terms of grades and test scores? These are things you want to consider. Do you want to go to the best academic school you can get into? Or do you want to go to a school that has a very specific major? Do you want to do undergraduate research? Is that a possibility at the schools you're looking at? Do you want to do internships or study abroad? What's housing like? Do students have to live on campus? Will the school guarantee on-campus housing? If you're looking at schools like Berkeley, the San Francisco area is incredibly expensive. So on-campus housing is far more affordable than off-campus housing. So if you're looking in a very expensive market, whether or not housing is guaranteed on campus is something that you might want to consider finding out before you go too far down a road with a school, only to find that housing is really difficult to get or extremely expensive, those kinds of things. What are the dining options if you're vegetarian, if you have peanut allergies, gluten allergies, those kinds of things? Are there options available to you at that campus or not? What kinds of extracurricular activities or other sports are available? How safe are the schools? What will they cost? And I would also say, as you're looking at schools, they all have pages where they will tell you what the cost is for a year of tuition, what the average cost is for housing, those kinds of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you'll pay. So I'll use the Claremont colleges again as an example. They're all a little bit different. They all have separate admissions for each college. But every one of them will guarantee to meet a certain percentage of financial need. So you might look at a school and think, okay, it's going to cost me $70,000 or $80,000 a year to attend this school, but the school will guarantee to meet 100% of your financial need. So if you fill out the forms with your family and it comes back and says, okay, we think you can afford to pay, say, $8,000 a year for school, and you get into that college, they cover the difference. So you're not paying the $70,000 to $80,000 a year. You're paying maybe $8,000 or $10,000 to attend that school. So there are a lot of schools, very expensive private schools, that have very good financial aid departments where you could end up going to a school that looks on the surface to be very expensive, but you could go there cheaper than you could go to a state institution in some cases, in many cases. And of course, the better your grades, the more likely you are to get academic scholarships as well. So those are things to consider when you look at cost. What is a financial aid package looking like? What kinds of options does the school have? Do they have guarantees to meet a certain amount of financial need? And then you want to research the programs, the lacrosse programs that you're interested in. You want to look at the coaches and you want to look at their coaching style, but that can't be the only reason you go to play for a program. And a really good current example. So Tim McCormick, the head coach at ASU, he recruited a whole bunch of high school 2022 grads to come here next year and play for Arizona State University. And when those girls show up in August, Coach McCormick will not be there. He has taken a job to replace Janine Tucker at Johns Hopkins for next year. So all the girls he's recruited to come play for ASU, when they get here, he won't be here. So hopefully all of those girls are coming to ASU for more reasons than we think the coach is great. You want to like the coach and like their coaching style and feel comfortable with that, but it can't be the only reason you're interested in a program, because you just never know. Coaches will move to other schools. It happens all the time. And so you never know. There's no guarantee that the coach who recruited you will be there the entire 4 years you are at that school. So you've really got to like more about that school. You've got to like the players, the team culture. You want to look, does that coach or that school have issues with particular majors? It does happen where some schools strongly discourage athletes from having certain majors depending on how demanding they are. Some of the hard STEM majors, lab-heavy sciences and engineering, a lot of schools allow those majors, but some schools are more supportive of those majors than others. So if you're interested in a major like that, that's something to consider. In many cases, you end up, if you play a spring sport, you take extra lab courses summer or fall, and you have fewer labs in the spring when you're playing. If you're a fall sport athlete, you end up overloading your labs spring, summer. There are ways to do it, but when you're looking at programs, you're looking at schools, that's something you want to consider. A good way to tell what the schools support, what common majors are, if you're interested in a school, go to their athletics site, find the lacrosse team, click on the roster, and they all have a roster link. You'll be able to see the coaches, coach bios, but you can look at the roster of players and you can see the girls' year, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You can see the position they play. You can see where they're from. You can see their majors. So you can look and see. So if you go, for example, and you look at UC Davis and you look at their roster on their lacrosse team, there are a lot of hardcore science and engineering majors on their lacrosse team. So it's pretty clear when you see that many girls with hard science and engineering majors that that's something that school and that coach will support. You wouldn't see that many girls, especially upperclassmen, with those majors if there was no support for that, if it was a problem. You can look at other schools and see sometimes the major shows up right under the player's name on the roster. Other times you have to click on the individual players to see their major. But that's something that you might want to look at. Is everyone on the team a communication major? Because if you're looking at a team roster and 90% of the players are communication majors, that tells you what the expectation is for that team. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have no desire to be a communication major, that might not be the team for you. Look at how many girls from which grad years are playing which positions. So it'll kind of give you a sense of, if you're being recruited or want to be recruited as an attack player, for example, how many attack players are already on that team? What are their grad years? How big is the roster? If you're really interested in a school that has a roster of 55 girls on the lacrosse team, it doesn't mean you're not going to play, but there's a lot of competition nonstop, and the more girls there are on the roster, the more competition, the harder it is to get playtime. So those are the kinds of things you're going to want to consider. Look at what the individual skill level and team skill level is of the teams you're interested in. What type of girls have they recently recruited? Those things are all really important to make sure that not just the college you're looking at is a good fit, but the lacrosse program within it is a good fit, because you're trying to find both. You're trying to find the right college fit for you, where if you showed up and the first day of practice had a career-ending injury, you would still be happy at that college. You want a team where even if you're a year in and your coach moves on to coach another team, that you will still be happy with that college, with that team, with your teammates. Athletic fit's really important. So as you're researching these colleges and you're researching these programs, you want to make sure you're not wasting your time trying to get recruited somewhere where it's just not a good fit. On the left, you'll see, unfortunately, this is a perception that D1 is better than D2, D2 is better than D3, D3 is better than NAIA. What's on the right is more the reality. There are D2, D3, NAIA teams that can beat D1 teams. So it's not a strict hierarchy. There's a range of talent and a range of skill level on teams at every level of the game. So don't get hung up, I have to go D1, kind of thing. There are a lot of really good options. There are a lot of really good schools. There are phenomenal schools that are D2, D3, NAIA. So don't get hung up that you have to go one particular level. Like D1 or bust is an awful place to be because there are really good schools all over the place. And a lot of, at least on the lacrosse end, a lot of kids don't realize it. Johns Hopkins is a D3 institution. They are D1 for men's and women's lacrosse, and they're a D3 institution for every other sport. And it doesn't make Johns Hopkins any lesser of an institution. It is a phenomenal school. And there are a lot of really good schools. MIT is a D3 school. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University is a D2 school. They're excellent schools. University of Chicago, D3. There are a lot of really good schools at all levels. Your D1, D2, or D3, basically based on how much money the school is willing to put in to the sport. It doesn't mean the school is better. It doesn't mean the team's better. It just means there's more money. So when you're looking for athletic fit, we'll go through some screenshots from NCSA. If you have an NCSA profile and you upload highlight reels, it takes a couple of weeks after your reel goes up, but NCSA has experts for every sport. And what'll happen is a lacrosse expert will evaluate your highlight reel or skills reel or whatever it is, and they will, with like the green bar that you see up there, they will evaluate your skill set. And then you can click on colleges you're interested in and click on match analysis, and you'll get something like this that shows up. Now, if you're a freshman and you have a reel and they evaluate you, things like GPA, SAT, ACT, the academic comparison below, there probably won't be anything for you because you won't have a high school GPA or transcripts or test scores yet. But the more you put in and the farther you get along in the process, the more stuff shows up. So this is a screenshot from a player when she was a sophomore. And this is UNC, the current national champion, D1. So in her sophomore year, this player was nowhere near that very, very far to the right bar where UNC is looking for athletic talent. But the student tested early, and her GPA and test scores were where they need to be if she wanted to go to that school. For this student, though, from her sophomore year to her junior year, she'd have to dramatically improve her skills for UNC to seriously take a look at her. Same player, Syracuse. So this student, in this case, her GPA and test scores are much better than Syracuse typically recruits at or requires. Not quite at the skill level they'd be looking for as a sophomore. So she'd have to get that skill level up if she wanted to go there, but much closer, because you can see Syracuse recruits a wider range of talent, where UNC recruits only a very small number of the top very elite athletes. Here we have Kennesaw State in Georgia. And so you can see as a sophomore, this particular player way ahead on the GPA test scores, and a pretty good, pretty even match with the skill level where Kennesaw State is recruiting at. And then here we have University of Akron. So all these schools I've shown you so far are D1. You can see as a sophomore, this particular athlete was already more skilled than the University of Akron is recruiting at. And again, GPA and test scores much higher than necessary for that particular institution. Regis is D2 out of Colorado. So you can see here as a sophomore, this student had a little bit of overlap with Regis. So need a little more improvement by junior year if she wanted to be recruited by Regis. But again, test scores and GPA well above what they'd need to be at, which is always a good sign. Here we have another D2, University of Tampa. And so you can see here, this particular player overlaps a little more with Tampa than they had with Regis already as a sophomore. And again, GPA and test scores better than they need to be. And that's always better than the alternative. So here we have St. Rose, also a D2 institution. So again, this particular athlete now, for this D2 institution, as a sophomore, this athlete has already, they overlap, but they're already off with a higher skill set than is typically recruited by this institution. And again, grades and test scores look good. Flagler, D2 in Florida. So here as a sophomore, this player is already, her skill set already far exceeds what Flagler is currently recruiting for. And again, GPA and test scores higher than they would need to be to go to this institution. Tufts, D3. It's an excellent high academic D3 school. And you can see here, this particular D3 institution, we have our same sophomore athlete who doesn't quite even come up against where the bottom end of where Tufts is recruiting skill set wise. So she'd have to improve by her junior year to be considered. Now her grades and test scores are right on the money where she'd need to be. Again, this is a high academic school, so their GPA and test score requirements are higher than a lot of other institutions. But you can see Tufts as a D3 is recruiting a much higher level of athletic talent than some of the D1s and D2s we just looked at. And Tufts routinely, by the way, their men's and women's lacrosse teams will often play D1 and D2 teams in their schedule, and they have been known to win a number of those games. So again, don't just assume D1 is better than D2, better than D3. That's not always the case. Here we have Claremont Mudd Scripps. So these are three of the Claremont colleges that combine to form one team. And again, D3, and they're recruiting at a very high level, higher than a number of the D2 and D1 schools we've already looked at. Here we have Oberlin. It's a small liberal arts college in Ohio. So here we have the same sophomore player overlaps quite well with the skill level. GPA and test scores where they need to be. But again, this particular institution is also recruiting at the same or higher level than a number of D1 and D2 institutions. And then here we have Adrian, also a D3 institution. And again, here we have our particular player as a sophomore. Her skill set and her GPA and grades are higher than where this particular college is currently recruiting at, but this particular school is recruiting at a comparable level to some D1s and D2s. Here's Benedictine. They're an NAIA school. They're the current national champion. So you can see where the skill overlap is. And again, this particular institution aligns with some D1, D2, and D3 institutions recruiting. And then here we have Aquinas, and it's the same kind of thing. We have some overlap on the skill set there, and this particular institution is also recruiting at a level comparable to some of the D1, 2s, and 3s that we've seen. But this is a really good tool for you as athletes. Set up a profile, get a highlight reel loaded or a skills reel, whatever you have to do, wait a few weeks till it's been evaluated, and go in and do this match analysis. for schools you're interested in. If you're a freshman and you're a little ways off, but you're improving, you know you're improving, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're going into your junior or senior year of high school and you're looking at schools like UNC, Northwestern, USC, Michigan, schools that you will typically find recruiting way on the elite end of that scale, and your skill set is way down at selective and you're nowhere near them, you're not looking in the right place. You're, as an upperclassman, too far away for those schools or those coaches to seriously consider you for their lacrosse team. But if you're overlapping, it might be a good fit for you. So that's something to consider. You want to look at how close is your skill set to where they're recruiting at, and how much time do you have to get to that level before you need to make a decision and they need to make a decision whether or not they're going to seriously consider you. So it's a really good tool to help players look and really kind of evaluate where you're at relative to other players and relative to what the colleges are looking for, because you don't want to waste your time reaching out to UNC or Maryland over Boston College over and over and over again if your skill set is nowhere close to what they're looking for. On the other hand, you may be thinking those schools are out of reach, and look at the match analysis and see you have a pretty good overlap. Maybe you want to consider reaching out to those coaches and looking at those schools. It might be a really good fit for you. If you're a 2023, by now you should have the list of colleges you're seriously considering narrowed down to 10 schools. Every school you apply to costs money, and it can get really expensive really fast, and it's time consuming to go through the process. So if you're not already there, pretty quickly you need to be narrowing your list down to 10 schools and working with those schools and those coaches to figure out who's a good fit for you and where you might want to be going. If you're a 24 and you're going into your junior year, by now you should probably have your list narrowed down to 10 to 15 schools, coaches that you're regularly trying to communicate with, get in front of, figure out where the best fit is for you, and narrow down from there. If you're a 25 or a 26, your lists are going to fluctuate a fair bit over the next year or two. Just start looking at colleges you're interested in, look at the match analysis, kind of figure out where you're at. Keep it to 25 or fewer schools at any given time. Schools might come off and you might add some other schools. You don't want to just say, I'm interested in whoever, because you can't be emailing 500 coaches. You can't be DMing 500 coaches. You've got to get down to a reasonable, workable list and start trying to build relationships with coaches at the schools of most interest to you. So by the time you're a senior, and even as a junior, so 23s, 24s, you should be approaching the point where your list is fairly short and fairly varied. You want a couple of reach schools, 2 or 3 reach schools. Those are academically schools that accept very few of their applicants. Some schools are always reach schools. You can have a perfect 4.0 unweighted GPA and a 1600 on your SATs. Stanford is still a reach school for you. University of Chicago, still a reach school. It's just the way it is. They're very competitive. Dartmouth, still a reach school. They're reach schools for everyone. Athletically, a reach school would be one where on your match analysis, your skill set is a little overlapping, but kind of on the bottom end of what the college is looking for. So that's a reach school for you athletically. Target schools are schools, again, for GPA and test scores around 50th percentile for students admitted. And those are schools where there's quite a large athletically overlap in the match analysis. A safety school will be schools where, again, academically, they accept a much greater number of students, and athletically, the overlap has on the match analysis, you're more skilled with the overlap, or you're completely onto the other side of what the school is looking for. But once you've got a potential list of colleges, you want to really start communicating with coaches as soon as you can. Build a profile first, at least get basic information in there. If it's at all possible, get a highlight reel or skills video, whatever you've got. And send an intro email to coaches. You can give them a link to the profile, tell them a few sentences about yourself that will help them get to know you. Say something nice about the college to show that you've done some research. Maybe mention something about the program that you like. Any of those kinds of things. But start the communication. See which coaches respond and how they respond to you. If you're going to tournaments, camps, clinics, any of those things, you're going to want to send emails to the coaches who will be there before the event. And again, you'll want to show that you've done some research in their college, in their program. Tell them a little something about yourself. The kinds of things you share will vary depending on how recently you sent them an intro email. You want to keep giving them more information each time, something new. You don't want to keep saying the same stuff over and over again. But you want to let them know that you'll be at that event. You saw either on their Instagram or, on that tournament's website or whatever it is that they'll be there. But you want to let them know to maximize the chances that they'll be looking at you. If a coach does come out to see you, you want to send a post-tournament or camp email or whatever it is and thank them for their time, reiterate to them how you did in the tournament, something about their school, all kinds of, there's all kinds of things you can say, but you want to continue to build that relationship. It doesn't happen very often because, again, you can't just randomly show up at tournaments and just hope to get recruited. But sometimes some of the smaller tournaments that aren't necessarily recruiting tournaments, local coaches from nearby colleges will just, show up a little bit to watch some girls. And sometimes they'll get from the tournament organizers, if there's someone they're interested in, they'll get your information and they'll reach out and say, hey, I was at, Surf Storm or whatever tournament they were at. I saw you playing with this team and I really liked how you did this, this, and this. If you get an email like that, you send a post-tournament email to that coach starting with, thank you for coming to watch me play. Something like that. Ideally, before you email them back, you took a quick 10 minutes, if you don't know a lot about them or their school, to look it up so that you can say something to them about the school or program that you like. Start a conversation, even if it's a school you've never heard of. If you look them up and they look interesting, start the conversation, build the relationship, see where it goes. If you look up the school and you realize there is no way this school is not a good fit for me, it's, rural North Dakota and that's just way too cold, I want to be somewhere warm, you still want to email the coach, thank them for their time and for watching you play, and let them know you'll keep them in mind, but at this time you're not looking to, say, move that far away from home for college. There are nice ways you can say, I'm not really interested in your school at this time. But you don't want to ignore the coach because you think it's not somewhere you want to go. You may change your mind. Even if you don't, coaches talk to each other. You don't want to be rude to a coach. You don't want to blow off a coach. Be polite, be professional. You don't have to lead them on, but, North Dakota's a little too cold for me. It's a little too far from home. But, there are polite ways you can say, I'm not sure this is the right fit for me. You can reach out to coaches on social media. You can follow them on social media. Depending on what grad year you are, phone calls, text messages. At any grad year, you can do unofficial visits to colleges. You can do tours. You can look at the schools. If you can't do an unofficial visit in person, a lot of colleges now have virtual tours and all kinds of things where you can learn more about the schools. When you're a senior, you can do in-person official visits. How many you can do depends on what division you're talking about, but you can't do those until you're a senior. Those are funded by the schools, and you don't have to do an official visit to get recruited. So if you're going to be emailing coaches, and you should be, I would recommend you use a recruiting dedicated email address. So don't use your regular email address where you get school stuff or stuff from friends and family or whatever it is, your job, if you have a part-time job. I would recommend you do first name, last name, grad year at whatever, gmail.com, yahoo.com, whatever you pick. Cox, whoever, who cares. But first name, last name, grad year tends to work. But something along those lines, because it's professional, it's really clear. When an email from you comes into a coach, they know right away with your grad year on there, based on the NCAA or NAIA rules, they'll know what kind of communication they can have back with you. Because the older you are, the more flexibility they have to be having recruiting conversations with you. If you're younger, they're really limited in what kinds of responses they can give back to you. So it's really helpful to coaches. It makes it easier for them to send you the right response right away if they know what grad year you are. You can create separate tags or folders for each college and coach. That way it's easy for you to keep track of your communication with each school and with each coach within a school, because you might be talking to more than one coach at the same school. The sports recruits, NCSA, if you do a paid profile, you can email coaches from within the service. The free profile doesn't allow you to do that. The paid does. There's a little bit of an ease of trackability if you do that, but for most kids, if they just do first, last, grad year at Gmail or whatever, and they keep track with different folders, they're fine. It's really easy to keep track of coach communication. You don't have to pay for a profile to communicate through an app. So if you're not wanting to spend $1,000, $2,000 on a recruiting profile, do a free profile, set up a free Gmail account. You'll be fine. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do this. You don't have to spend any money to get up a profile and communicate with coaches. So with emails, we have some do and don't best practices. It's all pretty basic information, but you want to be positive. You want to share things about yourself academically, athletically. You want to make sure that you share with them things you know and like about the school, those sorts of things. So they know you've done your research, you know what you're getting into, you're genuinely interested in their program or school. You want to be careful, stay positive, don't badmouth other teams or schools or coaches, no profanity. Be really careful when you email coaches before you hit send. Double and triple check everything in your email to make sure you have the correct coach name and the correct college, and it's the right coach for that college. You don't want to send an email For example, let's think about this. So right now we have Kelly Amante Hiller, who's the coach of Northwestern. So you don't want to send an email, "Hi, Coach Amante Hiller," and go on and on about how interested you are in her program and how much you love the University of Michigan, because you had just emailed the Michigan coach and you didn't sufficiently personalize your email and you sort of forgot to change to the correct college name. Double check, triple check, make absolutely certain that you're not mixing up coaches and colleges. That's just a really bad way to go. So just be careful with that. Make sure if you're going to be communicating with coaches online that you're cleaning up your social media. So an easy rule of thumb for social media for kids who aren't quite sure what they should or shouldn't say or do on social media: if you would not feel comfortable showing that post to your grandmother, you don't need to post it. It's pretty much that simple. If you'd be embarrassed if your grandma saw it, don't do it. And then if you're going to talk to a coach on the phone, just make sure you're somewhere free of distractions, you've got thoughtful questions prepared, and make sure you say thank you at the end of the conversation. They're giving you their time, they're very busy. Coaches might ask you, "Tell me about yourself." It's similar to your personal statement. Tell them things they wouldn't already know from looking at your profile. They might ask you about your strengths and weaknesses. They might ask about your academic goals, what kinds of things you're looking for in a team. Be honest. You want to find the right fit for you, and not every program will be a right fit for you. Questions you can ask coaches. Ask them what they're looking for in an athlete at your position. What improvements can you make? Do other athletes in the program have your major? How many other players are they recruiting from your grad year? What's the team culture like? Eventually you can ask them about scholarships and money. Don't do that on first phone calls. After you've built a relationship with a coach, you're farther along in the process. It might be likely you'll get an offer. That's when you want to start talking about scholarships and financial aid at that school. In person, it's the same kind of thing. Have good questions. Don't start a conversation talking about money. Say thank you. Be professional. Be polite. They're watching you the entire time you're there. It's a kind of a long-term job interview. So make sure you put your best foot forward. If you want to play D1 or D2 and you're going into your junior or senior year, register with the NCAA Eligibility Center as soon as you can. If you're a freshman or sophomore, just set up a profile page with the NCAA so that you can get your transcripts and those kinds of things to them. But that way you're ready to go. Just a couple of key dates. So those of you who are 24s, D1 can start having recruiting conversations with you September 1st. D2, June 15th, so in just a week or so. Seniors, you can start doing official visits August, September, the first day of classes for the colleges. And the signing period opens November 9th this year. So that's if you've been admitted to the college and you've had an offer, that's the earliest you can sign. Just keep in mind, lacrosse is an equivalency sport. So if you haven't been in the recruiting process for very long, and you're not quite sure how it works, an equivalency sport, rather than a head count sport, means that the money can be divided up. So for example, D1 gets about 12 scholarships for women, and they divide those up amongst the players however they want. So if you're wanting to play lacrosse in college, you are not likely to get a full athletic scholarship. it's more likely partial, and then you'll get a mix of other aid, academic aid, need-based aid, that kind of thing. But this is really sort of it in a nutshell, what the colleges and coaches really want to know about you. Are you prepared to succeed, and can you perform immediately when you get to that school? And if you want to be recruited, they mean both academically and athletically. So are you prepared academically to succeed at that school? Because college coaches don't have time to hold your hand and make sure you pass your classes. And are you ready to go where they can develop you pretty quickly into the player they need you to be at the college level? And honestly, they like having you around for the next 4 years. Are you going to be a player they're going to enjoy, that your teammates are going to like? Are you coachable? And in the end, when you want to get recruited to play sports in college, it really is like a very long job interview process. You're basically asking a college to give you a PR job for 4 years, where you represent that college and that team for 4 years. And they want to know that you will represent the team well, that you have good decision-making skills, that you're not going to be out on social media bad-mouthing your opponents, bad-mouthing your teammates, bad-mouthing your coach, bad-mouthing your professors, whatever it is. So make sure in the recruiting process that you keep your grades up, your communication with coaches is positive, you are coachable and take feedback, and you make good, polite, professional, respectful decisions so that coaches and admissions folks are comfortable that you will not embarrass the college when you get there. We have sample emails and that kind of thing for those of you who might need some help emailing coaches. So if you go onto our website, southmountainlax.com, and make sure you register for this event if you haven't already, we can send you the sample email and some other handouts. If you're not sure how to do a highlight reel or you need help, you can go to southmountainsports.com and reach out to us, and we can help you with a highlight reel. If anyone has any questions, you can just email us, reach out to us on Instagram. If we have any questions now, we could probably answer them real quick. It looks like we don't have any questions at the moment, but reach out if you have any questions, and hopefully everyone found this helpful. And just make sure if you want the handouts that you've registered, and we'll get the handouts out to you as quick as we can. Thanks.